I understood that torrenting was something that really was going to change the way we distribute media, film, music, literature, whatever. In 2017, my friend introduced me to Bitcoin. It was like, okay, this is it. It's exactly the same. They've been putting so much money, so much political power into trying to stop developers, stop Bitcoin any way they could. And now they are realizing that is an impossible task. They took the MP3s and they wrapped it in the Spotify platform. They're now going to wrap Bitcoin in their vehicles to be able to offer it as well. So it's exactly the same timeline, a decade in between. It's so interesting.
Archie.
Why don't you give us an introduction to who you are, what you've done? I think that would be really good context for people to help understand your experience and where you're coming from.
Yeah. So I'm from Argentina, and I grew up in Argentina in the late 80s, when my country went through like a hyperinflationary dumpster fire, which led my mom to emigrate to Norway. And I grew up between Argentina and Norway essentially until my 20s. And every time I came back, I always heard this topic of conversation of inflation. You know, inflation this, inflation that. My aunt, were talking about like grocery store strategies. My cousins were talking about like, okay, I know about this guy in this like underground, a currency exchange place that had really good rates because he really wanted to, buy as many dollars for as cheap as possible. Conversation like that was like literally over dinner, it was so common. And I thought, okay, this is probably how it is. But after coming back every single year for 15 plus years, the topic never changed. I was like, what's going on here? Why is this inflation such a problem, such an issue that everybody talks about nonstop, from my grandma to my young cousins? It's always a conversation of a topic of conversation. So, tapping into my public education in Norway, I obviously had no clue because they don't teach you these things. And also there's like a high trust in government in Norway and stuff like that. And when a friend of mine introduced me to Bitcoin back in 2017, my experience with hyperinflation and seeing how inflation really destroys the social fabric of a community, of a country, in terms of like a lot of people fleeing the country and going elsewhere to build their future. Bitcoin just clicked for me instantly. And in my career before that, I came from the music business. So I had like a very entrepreneurial in the beginning. I had my own record label early on. It got bought by Universal Music in Norway, at that time EMI Music. And I started in EMI Music after I exited my record label. And during that time in the late aughts, 2008-ish, there was a lot of controversy with the Pirate Bay guys over in Sweden. And one of the co-founders was a Norwegian guy, and he was in my social circle. So I follow the Pirate Bay things very closely while I was like working at the Big Bad Wolf, one of the big 4 record labels in the world. And I understood that torrenting, the technology behind what the Pirate Bay was offering, was something that really was going to change the way we distribute media, film, music, literature, whatever. And I wanted to really embrace that while working at Universal Music. The executive hated me. I rage quit the industry, but I always wanted to be part of like technology that has a disruptive nature. So when all of that in 2017, my friend introduced me to Bitcoin, and I came with that experience from both Argentina and working in Universal Music during the torrent wars, you can call it that. It was like, okay, this is it. And ever since, I've been massive Bitcoiner, and the last 4 years I've been working at Blockstream as the VP of Marketing Communications, working alongside Adam Back and one of the brightest minds in the Bitcoin space. And up until today, 3 weeks ago, I quit Blockstream, and now I launched my own business called Perception, which is a intelligence platform for Bitcoin, stablecoins, and tokenized equities, essentially emerging finance, because I see the same disruption that I saw in Universal, that I saw with Bitcoin. I see that also happening in the media. So yeah, that's essentially me.
Man, living through the proliferation of P2P music file sharing was that were like the golden years of my youth. And it wasn't just music that we could share. It was also films and TV shows and everything like that. So that, for me, that was like the first major application online that just completely demolished an industry. I mean, we had IRC before and was it AOL chat and all that, and they were they were innovations. ICQ, all these sorts of things were innovations about helping people communicate, but they didn't really disrupt an industry the way Napster disrupted the music industry. When that started, when Napster took off, what was the initial reaction in the music industry? Can you share that with us? Yeah. Because I think there are really good parallels, obviously, with what's happening with Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is an awesome question because it's totally like you can draw parallel lines between the evolution of these two things. The reaction is exactly the same. So all these executives, and I lived it. I was in these board meetings. They just wanted to stop it. Like, this is something we got to stop. We got to put these people in jail. We got to close down the domain. We got to just evaporate all of this. And they fought it. They tried. At the time that I'm speaking about, I mean, torrenting wasn't that new. So by that time, it was so big that the Pirate Bay guys were going through a lot of like legal. They were going through lawsuits. I think all the Universal Studios, the record labels, they put all their legal teams, all the legal power, and put so much money into this, the cease and desist letters and all of that, and they did go to a Swedish court and they did get sentenced, and they became successful in closing down the site for a little bit of time, but right now, I mean, it's everywhere. And then essentially, when they understood that this is a battle that we can't win, they bend the knee. And somebody like Spotify, also Swedish, by the way, came along. And essentially when Spotify had there was so many people who wanted Spotify in the US. US was like the last country, I think, to ever get Spotify. And once they did, I think all the 4 biggest record labels, they cut the checks. And I think they got a 18-19% stake of the shares, the 4 big ones amongst themselves. So that Spotify could be launched in the US. And essentially what they did, they took the MP3s and they wrapped it in a Spotify platform, right? And right now there's a lot of, and I've been tweeting about this too, like there's a lot of parallels between what's happening with Bitcoin right now, where, we had a period of time where there's a lot of politicians and institutions who wanted to just stop Bitcoin. I mean, good luck. I don't know how you do that. They've been putting so much money, so much political power into trying to stop developers, stop Bitcoin any way they could. And now they are realizing that it's not possible. It's an impossible task. So now they're thinking about how do we wrap Bitcoin into our financial instruments and these vehicles that we want to now offer to the public. So it's the same way the music business wrapped MP3s into the Spotify vehicle. They're now going to wrap Bitcoin in their vehicles to be able to offer it as well. So it's exactly the same timeline, a decade in between. It's so interesting.
I love the meme that, first they ignore you, then they laugh, then they fight, and then we win. Yeah. In the case of P2P music, the adoption was so rapid. My recollection of Napstar's rise was so rapid that there was no time to ignore or laugh. Mm-hmm. The music industry instantly got angry. Whereas with Bitcoin, I would say the first 10 years was either ignoring the first 5 years, and then the next 5 years it was mockery. And I think we've just gone through the they fight you phase, and that was put to an end with Trump's victory in the United States. And it was kind of short-lived, but I don't think the industry understood that they were in a fight until about 18 months before the election, and they put together the pack. I forget what the name of the pack was.
Crypto Army?
Is it Fair Shake or something like that?
I don't know.
The one the Gemini brothers, Winklevoss brothers were supporting, and a whole bunch of others in the crypto industry. It was not a Bitcoin pack. It was a broader crypto political action committee that kicked into gear. And then I think it was in response to Elizabeth Warren explicitly stating that she was building an anti-crypto army. Yeah. And the industry started realizing with a whole bunch of things happening through regulatory bodies that we were in a fight for survival. Mm-hmm. I think we were in a fight and we didn't understand that we were in a fight. Mm-hmm. And once they kicked into gear, I don't recall a short campaign by any political action committee that's just been so effective so quickly. So, everyone who was part of that, congratulations to them.
Yeah.
Fantastic job.
Definitely.
And I think Bitcoin is now and then we win, but it's I see a lot of hearts being broken on the timeline about the nature of that victory and what it actually looks like. And perhaps there was a bit of self-delusion and people were a bit ideologically blinded by what adoption is going to look like, because the system always co-opts an innovation in a way that befits the system. It's rare that an innovation changes an system entirely, but we may well have the last laugh in that regard, I think. So I'm interested in your comments about what we're seeing in Bitcoin with respect to adoption, or perhaps even some commentary about the earlier stages of that meme for Bitcoin as well, and any parallels that you see with the music industry's reaction to music streaming, because they didn't get it and they didn't want to get it. And my understanding and my recollection from those days is the music industry just got immediately angry and tried to fight immediately, because the threat was very immediate. There was no long build-up of adoption. It was almost within 6 months, everybody was file sharing, and it just seems strange. Like every teenager all over the world was instantly file sharing. So interested in your thoughts on that.
Man, there's so much to say. I think to comment on the first point, the fact that the music business people didn't see it coming is because since the get-go, they have just been middlemen, right? They were not the artist. They were not they were not into the music scene, whatever scene they were not rappers, they were not indie artists, they were not DJs. They had absolutely no clue. They just were. Their position was of an extractive nature, so they had no clue what was going on. So that's why they reacted the way they reacted, because they were not insiders in a way, right? They were just third parties that just found out a business model that was extractive, and they had the monopoly of the distribution. That was kind of like a little carrot that they dangled over any artists who want to make it ahead. So they had absolutely no clue, and it came as a shock because of that reason. Now with Bitcoin and fixing the money or changing the money, the people that you're talking about are very well insiders, and they are working with government too. So these are the people who are creating the bonds, the equities. They are the ones that are in the central bankers and speaking with the government. So these people are insiders, and I think with that comes a lot of hubris, perhaps. So that's when they saw something like Bitcoin and they didn't take it seriously, because they know how much power they had. They know how much control they have. So they were kind of like arrogant about it. And that was a blessing in disguise looking back, right? Because now we had so many years where we can really focus on making Bitcoin solid and robust and battle testing it live before hitting the real stage. So I think that's the big difference between the two. Record labels, no idea. Third-party extractors. These people in the money, in the financial world, are total insiders, and the hubris that came with that made them not take Bitcoin seriously right away. I think that's the main difference. Now, in terms of parts of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin community not liking how things are looking right now, I think it's kind of sad. Because on one side, everybody is propagating the meme of, Bitcoin is going to take over the world, hyper Bitcoinization, et cetera, and like, don't you think what second, third, fourth order of that meme means? That means the suit coiners are going to come here. That means, yes, paper Bitcoin summer is going to happen. I mean, how did you not think that was going to happen? You say that we're going to replace the fiat money. We're going to, scale Bitcoins to billions, and there's not going to be a financialization aspect of that. I think it's completely naive. And I feel bad for some of the people that I see in my timeline that are like screeching about this, because they come from a very ideological background where I guess the P2P circular economies, like the low level usage of Bitcoin means the most to them. And by all means, I think that's important too. But you have to figure out the entire piece of the puzzle here. And that's just a very small aspect of what replacing fiat money or having Bitcoin be the global reserve currency is. So it's a very short-sighted way of thinking. And I think a lot of people, a lot of the loudest voices in Bitcoin, unfortunately, have been kind of short-sighted in their thinking. Looking back now, like looking at how they are reacting to these things, which is sad. But I think at the same time, they do have an important role in preserving that like cypherpunk, P2P, idealistic part of Bitcoin. I hope that never vanishes. I hope there's more people in the future who are inspired by the cypherpunk ideology and they want to continue doing that part of the culture. But right now, Bitcoin is growing up. It's a teenager that is about to become an adult, and things change. And if you want to make some fun of it, I think it's kind of like we are now entering, the phase where Bitcoin is becoming pop and mainstream. To bring it back to the music analogy, and there's a lot of people who discovered Bitcoin first when Bitcoin was underground that are now mad that Bitcoin is becoming mainstream and commercial. It's the Bitcoin hipsters, essentially. And I guess that's part of adoption. Things will fragment into different factions, and every faction will hold up the Bitcoin ideology in their own way. But I think it's the total sum of that will make Bitcoin even more robust